Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to the Lord of the Rings, the adventure card game. So we've done all of the campaigns. We've done the adventure, the one adventure in this game, and the quick play, and all of the tutorials. So the only left single player content is these two encounters. At one point we did the Feast of Trolls and it was super difficult. I assume King of Caron and Gundabad Awoken also are going to be very difficult. But then we're just done for this series. Unfortunately, I also realized that I have just really dropped the ball on checking the audio on this series and several series previous to this series. So I have months and months of content in which the audio was recorded twice at a slightly delayed manner, and there's just this echo that cannot be fixed. Hopefully I fixed that now, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to just dwell on it too much. But yeah, when I was clicking start and hearing the dialogue read out aloud, and like we're about to do, I was hearing it perfectly fine. But when I went back and looked at the video, it was recording it twice, so there was an echo at the file level, not during the preview level or in the live presentation that I'm listening to right now. Inherently, I guess I have Lord of the Rings adventure card game to thank in that it crashed so bad that it caused my computer to reboot, that caused me to go back and look at the almost completely lost footage. There are built-in protections that hopefully prevent me losing actual video footage, but that was the only reason I even looked at the video. It potentially could have been months and months more in which the echo could have continued, just because I wasn't checking things. I have a new procedure now. I have a new automated system. It's a good argument, certainly, between you can create procedures and you can tell yourself or employees to follow those procedures, but that's always a very risky aspect, whereas computers are absolutely perfect at automating things and doing the thing they're supposed to do every time, or at least trying, and potentially crashing if they can't do the thing they're supposed to do. So I made a complicated program / script that will literally launch videos after I record them. So then I have to take a small break to jump around. It's not going to be a one-for-one listen to the entire video at 1 speed or anything like that, or even listen to the whole video at 2, 3, 4, or 5 speed. But I'll jump around, check the audio, check the video, things like that. For every single recording going forward, that's the best case scenario, means one bad recording happens. This whole system, the whole mess up really was not my fault, I don't believe. I feel like several months ago when I either installed OBS to a newer version, it changed things, or an older version of OBS would sometimes crash and change settings by itself. Or in particular, the audio would stop working, and really I should have reset my computer when the audio stopped working instead of messing with the settings on OBS. But there has been several times where OBS has all of a sudden just stopped working with the audio device when nothing is changed settings-wise or hardware configuration-wise. Anyways, we're here to talk about Lord of the Rings adventure card game. Let's hop in here.
Jorven steals a glance across the flames at the ragged and frozen strangers. Their starving eyes follow his every move as he ladles portions of stew into wooden bowls. What happened to these poor people?
The nights grow long now,
He mutters.
but not as long as during the winters of the Warlock. It is said that, during his reign, the Black Frost would descend from the heights, and the people of the moon would haunt the plains.
The strangers stare at Jorven, mouths agape, food forgotten.
For the dread Lord of Angmar had used his spells to summon the Mordrow, the Table Hound of Thangorodrim, the King of Carrion.
Jorven stops. One of the strangers has stretched out her hand as if to ward against his words. "Do not invoke his name," she moans, as the others huddle together, shivering in fear. "Do not invite him in." Lowering her trembling hand, the woman gazes into the fire. "For the King of Carrion has returned."
It's funny. She says, "Do not invoke his name. Do not invite him in." Then she invokes his name. Now, if that echoes, I have no idea what's wrong at that point. That sounded perfectly fine to me. I will check the video after this recording. But obviously, if there's still an echo, which there definitely shouldn't be, I would have no idea what's even causing it. Which almost certainly there isn't an echo.
It is the dead of winter, and evil is afoot. Ever greater numbers of northern Bjornings have come seeking refuge. Ragged and starving, they tell of a black frost that kills and corrupts, of the rise of moonlings and a sea of fangs, and the King of Carrion. Grimbjorn has summoned you for a meeting. As you arrive at his hall, a vigorous debate is underway among the local chiefs. The refugees' stories are too strange, too vague, too disparate to grasp what is really taking place in the shadow of the North Mountains.
My da used to scare me with tales of restless Mordrar.
Grimbjorn says, giving you an earnest look.
My people are besieged. The forces of Dol Guldur are rekindled. The spiders harass our forest trails, and the western passages have become unsafe. This winter is the bitterest in recent memory, and now we have many more mouths to feed. Will you help us uncover the truth of this new devilry in the north?
So I guess this is supposed to be a story set in the north of Middle-earth. I assume Middle-earth is pretty much the entirety of the planet in the Tolkien world, and that this isn't North Earth or something like that. But it comes off in the voice acting as somewhat Russian, and seems like very quickly it's just all snowy, frozen tundra in the north as far as it's visually being depicted. Again, I don't suspect that this is actually canon to the Lord of the Rings or the Hobbit book, or maybe it's taking small elements from those books.
You cross the ford near the Carrack and head north, staying to the snow-covered plains just east of the foothills. The weather is frigid, and the nights are black. After sundown on the fourth day, you arrive at the Siros, a wide tributary to the Anduin. On the far shore of the frozen river, you discern the outlines of a darkened building, perhaps a farmstead or fisherman's house. When the howling of wolves swells behind you, you decide to cross the ice and seek shelter for the night in the structure, whatever it may be. The first 100 paces proceed without event. Then, with a dull grinding and moaning, the ice shifts beneath your feet. Something snaps, and the frozen expanse jolts violently. Floes breach the surface in some places. Long cracks form across it in others. Behind you, blurry shapes pace to and fro along the bank. Wolves, summoning the courage to dare the ice themselves.
One of the things I would say about this writing is that it doesn't work particularly well as a video game. Like, we don't really need 4 days of travel in the story. I feel like if you were playing Dungeons and Dragons, you wouldn't have a dungeon master say you traveled for 4 days to the north and nothing happens. That's just boring dialogue, and it's just stretching out everything. Particularly if you were playing like Dungeons and Dragons, traveling for 4 days probably would affect how much rations you have. In a video game, traveling for 4 days probably should affect how much resources of some sort you have, how much energy, how much food, how much time you might have. It only makes sense in a book, perhaps, to say they traveled for 4 days, but it is also in saying you traveled for 4 days, you also are saying nothing happened in 4 days. If anything, I think there is probably some criticism from people who have actually read The Lord of the Rings that could be made, where Tolkien in general is kind of like that, where he wastes a lot of time describing things that don't need to be described, and then in a few places I suspect he skips big chunks of time to then try and catch up. It also is fairly obvious that a more modern take on this idea would have some animal creatures on the good guy's side. It is really redundant to have spiders, wolves, orcs. I guess technically you wouldn't call them animals since they are thinking, speaking creatures. But then I think also the giant spider is a speaking, thinking creature in Mirkwood. So if once you have creatures that are animalistic, that have higher thought processes and the ability to communicate on a high level, it only makes sense that some of them would be on the side of the good guys instead of them always being the bad guys. And if you were going to try to avoid writing like that, you would probably have Middle Earth in like a perpetual famine where creatures are starving and everybody is attacked. Every animal is attacking everybody to survive. But I don't really feel like Middle Earth is ever really described as being in this perpetual famine where food is incredibly scarce. Horses probably should talk and fight alongside dogs, cats, birds. I guess technically Sauron uses eagles to fly at some point, but is that a case of the eagles being on the sides of good, or is it a case of Sauron just controlling eagles? It sounded to me like Razgard the Brown, or whatever that other wizard was very much an animal wizard, so it would have made a lot of sense for him to summon squirrels and things like that, small creatures, deer, to fight alongside the good guys, and it just doesn't happen.
It would be the death of you to come with me.
What about second breakfast?
Coming, Mr. Frodo! Coming!
Unless they were trying to, like, put out the theme that higher knowledge is good and instinctual lower knowledge in animals is inherently evil, which that's kind of a weird argument, I think, to potentially try and make, that animals are just inherently evil because they're not as smart as humans. Although I wouldn't be surprised if that is almost exactly what they are trying to I wouldn't be surprised if that's almost exactly how Tolkien thought. That would be very much an old-fashioned idea, certainly a biblical idea of man has domain over all animals and is superior to all animals in every way. But it's really even pushing it further than that. So, cross the frozen river. If 3 cracking ice are in play, your quest fails. This one discards up to 3 cards from your hand, or shed 6 cards, location specific. Grant +3 attack to every wolf. Defeat every wounded ally. Deal 3 damage to every character ignoring block, -1 damage to your characters for each card you discard. Now on my side, I can bring out a Northern Survivor, which probably isn't that useful. I could grant +1 resource to each player and restore 1 health to every character. I can gain this card that would exhaust every wolf enemy for 1 resource. And I can reduce 5 threat. But noticeably, you're just not going to really have time to do that. We need to cross the river, which means we need to throw all of our energy towards crossing the river, but it almost certainly is just the same old strategy.
The king under the mountain. Ha!
So immediately we lose our hero. Wow. Was there any way to get around this? I mean, let's just go back to the menu and start over.
Jorvens.
Like,
I must carry the burden to the end.
Must be someone with intelligence in the party.
Coming, Mr. Frodo! Coming!
let's see. We could play this, we could play this. We could get rid of this and get rid of that later.
No point in sitting around. Where are we going next?
The king under the mountain.
Okay. So then we'll play this and we'll attack
Break
this.
a good many things yet.
We'll attack that.
Go alone.
We'll attack that.
Alone.
We'll put this in defense mode. But I think we can pretty quickly see that this is going to be a very difficult attempt. Like, I'm immediately very damaged. I'm immediately very low on cards. Unless that's just the end of wolves. Which maybe it is. Okay. So, you hit the crackling eyes. Then you hit this.
Go alone.
I suppose it probably is worth it to bring this guy out. I didn't realize he was going to increase our progress by 3. Well, that's beneficial. So weirdly, I'm going to be 1 short. I'm frankly shocked we even got this far. Discard up to 3 cards from my hand? Sure. Discard Gandalf. Then draw another Gandalf.
May I offer a song to ease your troubles?
Okay. guess I want to put this in defense mode first. And then do that.
Show me the way up, or I'll skin you.
And then we'll heal this. And then we'll use power here. And use power here. The only one that's location specific would be this item. So it's not really necessary. And I guess we'll take the power while we're at it too. And then we'll travel. So that just sets us up very nicely for the next section.
Safe at last upon the far side of the river, you climb the shallow slope and approach the abandoned building. Snow has leached within through cracks in the doors and windows, while harsh winds and the ravages of wildlife have thinned the thatch to feeble patches. Strangely, the wooden beams are almost black, as if petrified or rotted by the cold. Spindly grey veins cover much of the stonework as well. The fine tendrils fall to dust where touched. Then you hear discordant scraping from the well nearby. You approach, weapons drawn. A shaft of moonlight reveals a terrible sight below. A young woman, clothing shredded, scrabbles at the sides of the well. You move to lower the bucket rope, but a companion grabs hold of your wrist. You take a closer look at the woman and notice her black fingers, black eyes, black lips shriveled into a cruel rictus. The rope slides from your hands. You're looking at a thing out of legend and nightmare. A child of the Black Frost, a moonling.
This is probably the best description we've had of any of the characters. Which, yes, seeing orc and goblin is pretty easy, or wolf is pretty easy to imagine. Most people have a general idea of what that is in their mind, but it probably would have been helpful to fully describe what the wolves look like or what the orcs look like. Now, inherently, the fact that I had to reset the first section on the very first attempt, or chose to reset, does highlight a big problem here. My intention is to show as much of these encounters as possible, but at any point I could fail and not make any way of forward.
From what the refugees said, the source of evil radiated from somewhere in the Bjord Fields, an outlier range of the Misty Mountains. When the weather permits, you can see their thin outline in the distance. Gusty winds whip dry snow across gelid ridges and rolling hills, causing frequent whiteouts that cover you in a rime of ice. From time to time, you swear you see shapes wandering in the white murk, but they eventually disappear, if ever they existed. After some days of travel, black clouds gather to the north and east, and the winds die down significantly. You're not fooled by the relative calm, however. You move to prepare shelter. Something tells you that a great storm is coming. Not long after, it does, and shapes move within it.
I really don't see the purpose of having two paragraphs, other than there seems to be just a clear mandate to not have text scroll and never have text on a second column on the right. But it feels like if you take the idea that they were told everything has to fit at a certain font size on the left here, the next obvious step is to potentially have some gameplay or something else happen in between each sequence instead of just having a paragraph, then clicking continue and having another paragraph. It all comes off like somebody's trying to make something, like somebody's trying to reinvent a visual novel effectively by having the text take up even more of the screen than a visual novel usually would, where the text would just be down here and there would just be characters being depicted and backgrounds being depicted up here and even up here, which is just wasted space. But ideally for a video game, I'd think you want some narration or interaction, and that might be as much as descriptive text. Then a character pops up and does some talking as far as like narration, either telling you what's happening or interacting with another character. It would probably be better if they were interacting with another character. And then it would probably be nice to have something else, some gameplay at that point. I could see very much in a AAA game you might have some narrative descriptive text in a few places, then you would go to a cutscene that was fully animated, then you would go to gameplay, then you might go back to a cutscene, and then you might get some more descriptive text. If you could jump between three or four different ways of pushing the story along, that would be great, instead of fully making it feel like you're just narrating in a book and doing an ebook, effectively an audiobook. I guess it's, yeah, audiobook.
Awoken from slumber, Mordra stretches luxuriously and licks his incisors. He dreamt about the strangers, the enemies making their way inexorably north to his domain. He stands, yawns, and casts his gaze around the hazy, bone-ridden plateau. Circling the stone tomb at its center, he inspects the seals and grimaces at the order that leeches through the rock. During the long ages of Middle-earth, few had plumbed the depths of malice as deeply as had Mordra. He'd laid at the foot of the Iron Throne. He'd bared his fangs to the silver light when the moon was young. He knew the language of the moon, and the secrets of the claws that await in the ice. He'd tasted the blood of greater heroes. He'd assumed many forms and taken many names. An unnatural growl begins deep within him, deepening as his mind reaches for the winds of the abyss. He wills them to blow hard, to blow south. It's time to deal with these strangers, these would-be intruders.
See, even the game knows that the narration really doesn't work. That's why we get these jumps from the enemy's perspective and a different voice actor reading that narration. Asmodee Digital, which I really am going to perhaps very unfairly put the blame on them for this game. But board games in general, or digital versions of board games and tabletop games in general, are always done to a particularly low quality. Sometimes they can be fairly polished. I say visually, this is very polished. Nothing lacking there. But there is just a lack of variety or creativity in how you would make it a digital game. It might frankly be smarter to try and do a Kickstarter for a game like this and have people submit their own content, or maybe you ignore the Kickstarter part of that and just have an editor so you could write your own text and write your own stories and share it on like the Steam Marketplace or Steam Workshop Marketplace, which, yeah, not very many people even know about Steam Workshop as an ability to integrate fan-created content. But in this case, if you really engaged with that, I imagine there would have been people that would have very faithfully created scenarios based around the entirety of the books of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. Maybe then the owners of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit would try and take that down, but I imagine they wouldn't even really care that much. But then also you would have a lot of people just writing their own stories. You will undoubtedly be dealing with a niche audience, and that is why so many of these games are done at a fairly low amount of content or low amount of polish towards the end game is that it is sold to a very, very small percentage of people who actually care about the games enough that they'd play it all the way through. And then I would say probably 40% of your sales for a game like Lord of the Rings, the adventure card game, are people who kind of like Lord of the Rings or hyped around it because the movies came out recently, and I guess they're going to remake the movie, so that may happen again. But they're not people who are actually that big of fans that they would stick around for 10 to 20 to 30 to 60 hours of gameplay. And certainly the achievements bear that out too, when you're getting achievements at 4% or 10% as far as just getting an achievement for completing a single player scenario. Also, in this case, since it has that multiplayer factor and we know that there's basically nobody online playing multiplayer, that element falls flat too. And at a certain point you also run into the problem of Tabletop Simulator being just a better solution overall, to have one game to rule them all, pun intended, that lets you simulate many tabletop games and have a game night between friends digitally and be able to swap between the different games, instead of potentially having 4 friends all have to purchase one version of one copy each of Lord of the Rings adventure card game to play that one game. You must make room to add characters to your party. Select an ally to replace. Well, I guess that means we'll get rid of this one. So now we have a campfire. Revenge, gain 1 campfire. If Winter Storm is in play, no attachments. Okay. We're supposed to survive the Winter Storm. And you all need a new companion joins you. Seems like we could do that now. Gain 3 firebrand, requires campfire, location specific. Deal 3 damage to 1 frozen or wolf enemy, restore 1 health to the character. So obviously we should just activate that immediately. Meanwhile here at 32 the Moonling Right will show up. So I just prepared so well here. We now have Firebrand, which just lets me kill this. What? That's a wolf enemy. Oh, then restore 1 health to your character. Okay, I see. And then that means restore more health to this guy and this guy. Which means I can now just put this guy in defense mode. And then restore here. And restore here again. And it makes every bit of sense to just kill this, I guess. And then we'll add 1 health there. Pause now if you want to read this. Who do we want to bring to the field? Okay. We just have enough Gandalf to just throw out a Gandalf immediately.
I am a servant of the secret fire.
So perhaps I don't really need to lower the threat, but we'll do it anyways. And then kill this. Go ahead and attack with that and do that. I have enough resources now to activate this other thing if I wanted to, or I could just reduce the threat even lower. Grant 1 resource to each player and heal every character. Now it's kind of a bad time to heal a character. We can go ahead and just replace that guy. Yeah. One, two, three. I got lucky here. 4. See, this is just straight up timed, so I think I was in a good position to make the decisions I did. Alright, just end the turn there. Okay, so we'll play Bilbo's Cloak on, I guess, this character. And then we lose an invent card. And weirdly, seems like there's just nothing you can do. So we'll go ahead and activate a distant guide and lower threat. And then I guess you put that in defense mode. And then I guess you just power up some more. There's really no reason to power up any more than that, so just end the phase. Obviously, if you hadn't done as much planning, you wouldn't have this issue. Like, you wouldn't be doing this well.
I will go alone.
This draws cards. I don't really see a need to draw cards. So I'm just going to end the turn. What's our goal? Survive the winter storm. This deck is so nice because it's around the idea of let's go ahead and activate this then. it's just around powering up your heroes and keeping your heroes alive. Rival grant everything to everybody. Well, that is nice. Is it fleeting? No. So on top of everything else, it's not even a fleeting character. And it would be kind of silly to restore one to every character when only one character is unhealthy. So once again, we're just in the turn. Weirdly, we've created a situation where there was just no gameplay to actually be had because I played so incredibly well. We lost our character though. We lost 2 characters there.
The stranger inspects your wounds and scratches with a gentle
I guess that was
touch,
supposed to be
muttering,
Radagast,
There.
although
Not so bad.
feels like a much
He
more
also kneels
useful
by the dead to close
Radagast
their eyes, as
compared to the
crestfallen as
last
if he'd
time we
known
saw him.
each one in life.
Radagast, at your service.
The old man finally says with a grunt, his snow-burdened beard swinging heavily.
There are those who call me the brown. Why not the green? Or the flower? I cannot say.
He inclines his staff towards the northern peaks.
It seems we've come to share an important task, my friends. To again put to rest one that should not have been awoken.
I almost wonder if all the wizards in Middle-earth are like the same person split into different personalities. That at one point they were all connected, because they're all described exactly the same, as looking like they have these long white beards and similar looking faces, and they're all drawn just about the same too. I wonder if Tolkien in some ways didn't look very similar to what Gandalf looked like, and he's just self-inserting. Gandalf is really a very, very powerful character, and the wizards are in general very powerful characters compared to almost everybody else described in the books.
You've heard of Radagast of Roscoble, an eccentric hermit and wizard who dwells near the southern borders of Mirkwood. The kin of Bjorn hold him in high regard as a protector of wildlife and living things. Then comes a flutter across the sun, a shadow on the snow. A peregrine falcon alights on the old man's shoulder.
Ah, so it is you, Limbe.
He says in greeting.
And what news do you carry?
Listening to the bird's squawks, Radagast grows solemn. He nods sadly after a moment, feeds Limber a morsel, then sends the falcon back to the skies with a gentle nudge.
I am called away with haste, I'm afraid.
He apologizes, humbled, as if breaking a pact with you.
Too many rotten limbs in the tree of late.
Fumbling under his cloak, he produces a small whistle crafted of acorns connected in clever fashion.
This will aid you, but beware. Do not blow this lightly, and be polite.
Then Radagast trudges away southward through the deep snow, the little falcon circling above him.
So one assumes that this whistle calls in other falcons, but kind of ridiculous, particularly for a video game, for a character to arrive and leave. And I don't feel like even in the books, Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, that you would write something that awkward. It's almost bipolar at a certain level, or just schizophrenic, that you would potentially write in a character and then have them leave as quickly as it's being depicted here.
The days that follow are blessedly calm, and you make good progress amid the ridges and flinty hillocks. Gelid streams and skeletal evergreens are your traveling companions. The land rises further, becoming mountains in their own right, foot soldiers to the great peaks ahead. Curiously, the incline appears to lessen, while the flanking mountains tower increasingly above you. Soon the sun barely reaches through the mountains, and the cold hardens without mercy. One early morning, you wake with a quickening dread. Shuffling to stand amid the fierce cold, you peer into the shadows. A black and bitter mist creeps from the north. The air crinkles as grey frost blooms on your armor and weapons. A reptilian hissing emerges from the mist, faint at first. It rises until the mountain pass throbs with a sibilation of moonlings. You feel a chill deeper than any cold. The black frost is upon you.
This is now at least the third time I've heard this narrator, I think, mispronounce something, in my opinion. And I'll throw it out just as an opinion. I believe gelid streams, I don't know if gelid is supposed to be pronounced that or if it's supposed to be jellied streams, in the sense that it's like jelly, in that it would be more bouncy and slimy instead of just a clear flowing stream, which would make sense if it was a frozen stream, that it would be kind of jelly. But skeletal evergreens, clearly that is not the way that's supposed to be pronounced. It's supposed to be skeletal, as in skeletons, in the sense that there are no leaves on the trees and it looks like a skeleton. And even here, as you see it depicted, the leaves are far at the top and the bottom parts are completely bare. So that, on top of the fact that you have a different voice actor, almost makes me wonder if this voice actor at one point was shown the door. But you can't blame the voice actor for this. The reason you have a director would be to listen to any voice acting work and be qualified to know how something is supposed to be pronounced and send back notes and get second attempts. And usually the director is in the process, in the room, or in the recording booth, usually, when a voice actor is working. Nowadays, in more modern times, a lot of voice actors work from home, but even at that, you usually have a director on Skype directing. Somebody above the voice actor should have said, that's skeletal. Or at least say, I'm not sure if this is supposed to be pronounced as skeletal or skeletal. Let's get like 3 takes with skeletal, let's take 3 takes with skeletal, and then send it to somebody higher, or at worst case scenario, put it to a vote amongst the other employees. Even if it is supposed to be pronounced skeletal, at a certain level, it's vernacular is common vernacular is way more important. So if most people would have mispronounced skeletal as skeletal, then you should just go with skeletal, even if originally or historically it was skeletal. Okay, so now we're supposed to survive the Black Frost, which it just feels like we're doing really well. This doesn't feel like this is the final encounter, though. Right. Gain Shield of Summoner, deal your attack when attacked in melee mode. That'd be useful for this character. But first, see if we can play this. This mysterious whistle. Do we want to activate this first? Black Frost. +2 resources to each player. Location specific. Grant 1 resource to each player, restoring 1 to each hero. I mean, we just have such a massive amount of stuff anyways. It makes a lot of sense just to do this first. And then Frodo's intuition. And then straight up just Frodo's intuition again. Or do we put something else on the field first? I really didn't even need to heal that one. Okay. So 6 on this. Well, let's start with 5. Then I guess we'll go 2. Then I guess we'll go 1. And then I guess we'll go 3. And then I guess we'll go 4.
Show me the way up, or I'll skin you.
And then 1. And then 6. Plus 2 resources versus 1 resource and restore a bunch of health, which we don't need. Let's just go ahead and take this shield while we're at it. Let's just see what can we play the shield on. That's a 1. Then self-preservation. Put that on that guy, I guess. Weirdly, you're taking a lot of damage there. Did we take damage because of this? Yeah. Which... put that in defense mode. And just go ahead and kill that. And guess we'll probably just attack with this one. Well, we'll attack with that one. We'll defeat that. Okay. Play this. And then we'll use the power here. And restore 1 to every hero. Since this is a good time to pull that off. I could play this and draw more cards, although weirdly, there's just kind of no reason to do that. We have just over empowered ourselves so well. So next sequence, if there is a location specific thing that costs 8 or less, we can just immediately activate it. Otherwise we could also just pull in a resource. We don't even know what the mysterious whistle would do, but I assume it would have summoned something, so I don't really need to summon anything.
Silence falls upon the mountain pass. Although your breath still leaves trails in the wintry air, the killing cold has retreated. A glimmer of sunshine touches the upper sides of the western wall. Looking ahead, you see that the canyon narrows. Hints of mist curl in the distance. Gathering your things, you begin the last stage of your journey.
That is quite a small amount of text compared to every other sequence of text we've seen.
The Bjord fields tower above you, sunlight kissing their upper slopes. The mountain's looming presence seems to ask, "Are you sure? Haven't you done enough?" You forge on, ignoring them. Thin ribbons of water, the errant plumage of hot springs, trickle from invisible openings. The temperature rises, forming a thick fog. It covers only your feet at first, but grows with each step, eddying and twirling as you move. Soon it closes off the sky. You find yourself walking in a witch's brew. You sense the canyon walls falling away on either side. Sounds flatten, and the light brightens to a brown-grey murk. You pass sulphurous pools. The rocks become slimy and take on multicolored hues, scintillating yet sickly. Bones appear, first a handful, then plentiful. Some are from animals, but most are of two-legged creatures, humans, elves, orcs, and others. The skeletal fragments sprout from the murk like morbid vegetation. Hollow eye sockets seem to watch, to judge the new arrivals.
Well, I guess at least the narrator is consistent in how she's pronouncing skeletal. Maybe that is a British translation too. Maybe they do pronounce it skeletal in the UK. That might be the case. Obviously, a ton of text in the second section compared to the very small amount of text before.
The pass ends at the base of a great stairway, steps so wide that either end is lost in the mist and gloom. The stone steps carved from the bedrock are slimy and shine with the baleful kaleidoscopic minerals of this cursed place. Trickles of foul-smelling water dribble down the steps from geysers above. Drawing your weapons, you ascend the dread stairway. Somewhere above, the King of Carrion awaits.
Okay. Again, I'd pronounce this geysers, and again we have a small amount of text, and again we're still getting like 3 paragraphs of text. They're reusing this image also, whereas previously this was an image that they had used to either depict a different group of people, it felt like, or a group of bandits. I couldn't even really tell. But obviously this is more just a generic collection of bearded people with weapons, although you also have a wizard here that looks like Gandalf and a dwarf looking character.
The shadow that was Wolf growls, pacing the
4th
stone
paragraph.
plateau. His anger enervates his minions. They lower their heads to avoid his baleful glare. Only the mindless seem unaffected by Mordra's anger. They gaze dumbly into the haze, listening only for the voice of the moon. Mordra barks a command to his feral minions. They slink over to stand near him before the old tomb. They wait for the footsteps to approach up the stairs and arrive at the landing ahead. They wait for the enemy to emerge from the sulphurous haze. They wait for the battle to begin. And the greatest of them all, the King of Carrion, the Hound of Morgoth, waits to taste the blood of heroes once more.
The male voice actor using sulfurous, pronouncing it pretty much the same way, which I think that's the right way you would pronounce that, and I can't imagine a different way to pronounce it. I almost wonder if these paragraphs are written or expanded from a generic outline or a summary of a larger story, because it does seem like, particularly in this case, using that big word sulfurous twice is really stretching it. You just don't need to use it a second time. It's such a big word that it stands out in people's minds. I guess if you had said sulfurous haze and then 5 other paragraphs and then sulfurous haze again, it wouldn't have been as big of a deal, but for it to just be in the last screen, it definitely stands out like somebody had a word of the day calendar and they were trying to use sulfurous as much as possible in speech. And yeah, we still are getting like completely unique playfields almost every single time, it feels like. A lot of effort put into that when you could have given me just 5 generic playfields and I would have been fine. Or even 1 generic playfield would have been perfectly fine. I could see a dark forest, a lighted field, maybe a desert, but I don't think we've even really done a desert. Same thing for like oceans or rivers. Maybe you have a river. We haven't done anything with an ocean. I don't think Middle Earth really does much with their ocean, since it seems like it's a Pangea-like world where there's just one giant landmass, one continent. But yeah, you definitely didn't need a unique field to be made when you could have made twice as many campaigns instead. So, deal 2 damage per player to Mordor, ignoring block, exhaust Mordor, location specific. This is Mordor. Yeah. So, it's probably not a terrible thought to get rid of that first. Deal 3 damage per player to 2 enemy units, or deal 3 damage per player to Mordor. I think you probably start with this one. And yeah, we just have to defeat this guy. Summon 3 vicious wargs. Is this a vicious warg? No, this is a malicious warg. Restore Mordor to full. I don't think they're going to get to that point. Okay. So, as this stands, let's start by attacking this. Did that actually do any damage? Yeah, you have to attack with the 2, so attacking with this was actually a mistake. Let's see what the mysterious whistle does. A Land Rover appears. Pause now if you want to try and read this tiny text. Okay. You attack with that. And then we could kill. We could heal.
You just show me the way up, or I'll skin you.
Or we can attack. Yeah, I don't even really think I have anything here. I think the smartest move is just to attack. I could kill this and then that would let me heal this. And then I could kill this. And then that would let me heal that. We have so much resources and so much to do. I could have frankly won this whole turn just by replacing one of my characters and attacking a second time from that. That would have worked, but whatever. We're gonna win in the next turn. We're not gonna even get to this point. We've lowered our threat level so much and so well. Okay.
Come on and taste it again.
2 damage there. That killed one person.
Quiet life? Maybe.
This one here would do 3 damage to Mordor right now, so yeah, just activate this. And pause now if you want to read this. Why did this guy come back to life? Well, I wasn't expecting that, to say the least. Alright, well, then go with a block. And I guess we're still just killing this guy. See, that feels like, regardless of what you were going to do, you had this random event that was going to happen no matter what. And that definitely doesn't seem particularly fair. Go ahead and kill that. And then that was a weird sound effect that just played. We're not going to have any more things, so there's just no point in gaining resources. We still have a decent chance of not letting him trigger a Sea of Fangs. Okay. I'm going to start by putting on defense mode. And then you kind of would save a decent amount of health by killing this.
I'll skin you.
Okay. I think for the most part, though, we'll probably have this. You attack here.
My adventure ends here.
And I could just throw that guy back out.
Twilight, maybe later.
I'll break a good many things yet.
Claws of Ice. So here you have yet another event just popping up. Which it frankly just does not feel fair at all.
For the Shire!
There goes one of our heroes.
I will go alone.
They aren't bringing any more people to the field. Except for now we have vicious wargs. All on the field. Three, 3, 2, 2. Is anything going to die immediately? I would say no.
Come on and taste it again!
Again, we'll just continue to try and fight this guy. And now this guy has an item on it, making him even worse. So you have to defeat him 3 times.
Mordrau burns once more. Every particle of his being flares, then dies away like a wind-fed ember. It takes you several moments to trust that the demon is finally and utterly gone. Calm falls on the plateau. A sense of peace, even of simple joy, though tinged by sadness. On the tomb, inscriptions that once looked wicked now possess an ancient beauty. You push aside the lid, expecting to find remains of a cruel warrior or evil warlock. Instead, you see the body of a large hound or great wolf. There is no sense of evil. Instead, it seems restful, wholesome. Respecting this aura, you reseal the canine form within the tomb. During your journey back south, you come to believe that Mordrau was not the body in the tomb. Instead, the demon must have been sent to corrupt whatever wholesome energy lay within. In time, the Bjorning refugees return home. Thanks to your aid, they should prove great allies in future struggles.
So you really don't get any explanation there, but whatever. I really wasn't that interested. Notice that the bubbling sound effects is still playing from the previous area, and that was not part of the audio problem I was having before. This is just straight up a glitch. I don't know why you're showing me a shirtless guy though. Like, is that supposed to be you? Or is that supposed to be a human form of the wolf? It doesn't seem like there ever was a human form of the wolf. Very difficult encounter, and I'm frankly surprised I succeeded. So what could happen here, that could throw a monkey in the wrench somewhat, is if all of a sudden they give me a massive amount of fellowship points. Like, you can see we're at 57,275 fellowship points. In general, I think if I was going to try to unlock everything, I probably need somewhere around 250,000 fellowship points. And we've done everything in the solo mode at once, so that's basically do everything in the solo mode at least 3 times, do that one quest that had 4 different branching paths 4 times, try to get every single challenge done once. Might be another way of gaining some more points. But yeah, it would be a lot of grinding. Just a massive amount of grinding. I got an achievement for beating this encounter, and it looks like somewhere between 3 and 5%, it's hard to read, of players accomplished that. 95% of players either didn't even try or didn't get very far with it. And here we have a Northern Survivor, which is a 1, 2, 4, which might be slightly better for 3 resources than what you would have gotten otherwise. Just a minimal 1 health, maybe 1 power incremental improvement over the base cards that you start with. So, the challenges were to complete the quest with every hero with 50% or more health. We lost a hero, so that's no. Avoid losing the campfire. We did do that. Avoid having more than 1 crackling ice in play. We did do that. Avoid having a moonlight right spawn from an ally's defeat. I don't know how you would have prevented that. I would have to investigate that. And defeat 2 of Mordor's forms in 1 round. So there was no way to avoid his form shifting aspect, even though the card itself does not talk about that. So in the real deck building tabletop game, I don't know how you would create a scenario like that, where a card does not have a description as to what is going on, but it does almost certainly feel like if you were to play this game in the real world, you would have to have some kind of dungeon master guide that where you read off what happens if this occurs and it's surprise to the other players. There is that whole feel that they really are coming more from the direction of there being a dungeon master who has extra secret knowledge compared to a deck building game where each player would be on equal terms as far as the knowledge, or any kind of other card game where, like, it's very weird to have a card game where one player has extra knowledge. And then we get our 1500 fellowship points for defeating it with 3 victories. But noticeably, it doesn't seem like there's anything more than that. So, this encounter is made to be very difficult. It would have definitely been very difficult if we hadn't just gotten lucky at the very beginning, which probably means that if you're having trouble with one of these encounters and you really do want to win on them, you are going to need to probably reset progress quite a bit and start off early. I have felt that it has been very much a case that if you get ahead of the curve of difficulty, you tend to stay ahead of the curve. And I really like that in most games, but in a card game, particularly with multiple different locations, perhaps there should be a little bit more balancing going on to make sure you're still getting a challenge near the end. And yeah, the final boss was somewhat challenging, but there definitely was a middle section there in that encounter where it was far too easy, and it felt like the final boss fight was going to be far too easy until he respawned 2 more times. You can see here in the cards that since we haven't unlocked a single card, there's a large amount. That being said, we are at 25 pages, with the 25th page having 5 cards shown, which makes me feel like maybe 1 or 2 cards extra have been unlocked, probably from doing hero awards like this. Otherwise, no other cards seem to have been added for doing any of the single player content. Yeah. And I've been playing very specific characters over and over again, like Frodo, and noticeably Frodo's spend 10 resources in the same round after activating Frodo's Achieve ability. I've never done that. And then I think we're also playing Pippa, and complete one quest with Pippin in play, a full fate meter, and 49 threat exactly, which that seems like a really difficult challenge to pull off. Then the third character I think we may be playing is this. No, I don't think we're playing Tom Took. I think we are playing Sam. Yeah. Complete one quest using 3 Hobbit heroes and with no Hobbit other than Sam being attacked. Which that might be doable. Let's see. Is this a Hobbit? Yes. Is Frodo a Hobbit? Yes. But obviously these hero awards are not natural. It's not something that's just going to randomly happen. And it's definitely worth pointing out, this is a deck building game, and I've built 2 decks that haven't worked, and then looked online for one deck that has worked way better than any of the pre-built starter decks did, and just left and lived with that online meta deck. As far as Sauron enemies, one would assume that Mordau will show up in this list, but I just don't feel like you're ever going to see him in any other encounter. Let's see, he got Mordau in one form as a 3/8, Mordau in another form as a 3/10, and Mordau in another form as a 3/12. Here we have a direct quote from the Two Towers. Interesting. Fellowship of the Ring, Two Towers. Yeah. I still really don't know if the book series is like the Two Towers, or chronologically the Hobbit, then the Two Towers, then the Fellowship. No, it probably is the Hobbit, the Fellowship of the Ring, the Two Towers, the Return of the King, and then Lord of the Rings, somewhere in there too. Like, I just don't know how broken up the book series really is, or if those are just chapters. I don't even know if there is a book called Lord of the Rings, or if that isn't just the general name for the series. There's a video game horror series called The Devil Came Through Here, but the name of the 3 games are The Cat Lady, Lorelei, and I always forget the third one that was chronologically the first one in the story. But yeah, it may very well be a situation like that where Lord of the Rings is just the name of it. We have seen the looming threat multiple times. Although, if we had seen the looming threat in the previous encounter, none of that really has anything to do with Sauron. Yeah, 36 pages with the last page on 2. I imagine in the next recording, which should be our final recording, we will see a few more enemies unlock, and maybe those enemies would unlock in the random skirmishes, but also it feels like you'd have to do the random skirmish multiple times to find and defeat the Balrog. Even if you wanted to do everything, this single player requires you to play in expert difficulty, which that is going to make things very much a nightmare scenario for you. I've been playing on standard difficulty. If all of a sudden I had to play an expert for anything, I would find that incredibly frustrating. Anyways, we've gone very long. That's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to support me further, there's some links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.